Well, welcome back, and I'm delighted to say that our guest here, as promised earlier, is Tori Amos. It is fantastic to have you here. We're thrilled and delighted. We love you, Tori. You've made some amazing records. I mean, you've sold 12 million records, played thousands of shows, had lots of awards, and now you've made a record with, or this is a second record, I believe, with a symphony orchestra. Tell us about this record. It's an amazing thing to do.
Well, they invited me to play with them just one show.
Which orchestra is it?
The Dutch orchestra, Metropole Orkest, and they invited me to play with them. And it was in rehearsals that we discovered there was this conversation, this chemistry going on, because I'd never played with one before. All the records, you see, the orchestra would play to my master recording.
Yeah.
So this was a first time for me. And somebody said at Deutsche Grammophon, we should record this properly and put it out.
What an amazing record this is. So, essentially, they've you re-recorded your original Earthquake.
Well, we re-recorded songs from the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So we had some from Little Earthquakes,
Yeah.
and we had some from different time frames that tell different stories.
And it's the sound of it is amazing. Was it daunting? Did you have to go out to Amsterdam to record the record with the orchestra there?
Yes, we did. I went with the engineers that I work with, Mark and Marcel, and we recorded everything there.
And I mean, there must there are sort of 60 people or something in an orchestra, presumably.
Yeah, about that.
So it must be quite a daunting sort of thing to go in with. How was the first day?
Well, you know, you unzip your skin and you go in, and I'm used to singing just to the engineers, a couple people, all my life. I've never done my vocal recordings or my performance with the strings or the brass. Mm-hmm. I'm always alone. So it was pretty intimidating. And you don't know anybody's name. You say, "Oh, hi. Okay, let me unzip my skin."
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's a lot of people to be unzipping your skin with all at once, isn't it? It's
that's
quite
right.
And also the idea of remembering 60 names in one go. I mean, it would take you sort of a year to learn them all, and then probably they've changed anyway. Who invited?
But the Dutch like to unzip, so that's good. I mean, they like
they like engaging in them.
They do.
And where did you record it in Amsterdam?
Hilversum.
Right, in the sort of great sort of Dutch classical music recording studio. I think it's a brilliant thing to do. Now let's go back. We'll talk more about this record a little bit later. Let's go back to the beginning. Where does music sort of start for you? When were you first aware of music?
Well, my mom says I would climb up on this piano stool, this big black piano, and upright at the parsonage. That I think was a gift from somebody. And she said around 2.5, I would just play anything that I would hear. And I was driving them nuts, getting up before the crack of dawn, playing things I might have heard the night before. And then my brother would come and bring records home. My mom had a huge record collection, so when my dad, who was a reverend, went to church, my mom would play me music.
Ah. And so you would be introduced to her record collection.
Her record collection, Fats Weiler, Blue Eyes. You know, she loved old Blue Eyes, my mother, Frank Sinatra. And then my brother would come home. He was 10 years older, and he would bring things like the Stones and the Beatles and the Doors. But he'd have to get the Doors out very quickly because, you know, that was the devil's music.
So your dad but he allowed the Beatles?
He allowed the Beatles, but that's about it.
That was very good of him. And so you've chosen a Beatles track, which is George Harrison's song. When did you hear this?
I don't know, Little Girl. And I'd play everything back as much as I could just because I didn't really like learning what I was supposed to learn from the Peabody Conservatory. I was supposed to learn certain songs, but I loved this music.
So there you were at home. Your father would allow Beatles records, but not the Doors records.
Or Zeppelin.
Or anything
like
that. So that was quite sort of tricky.
Yeah, because what he felt this music was doing to the young female parishioners in the church. He said, you know, these young girls need to gird their loins. This music makes them crazy. And I would think...
Had you seen any examples of people going crazy with this music?
Well, girls were running away from home to follow this music. You know, that this was the late 60s. I was born in 63, so I was at the Peabody Conservatory around 5 years old, and I was watching the teenagers responding to all this music. And it was exciting for me because I had little curly ringlets and my feet didn't touch the pedals or anything, and I'd sit there saying, wow, these kids are up to some cool stuff.
But it's interesting, he didn't think they were going to run away to see the Beatles.
He just liked the Beatles. Penny Lane was one of his favorite songs. He didn't hear the White Album. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know about the deeper music that they made. He liked things like Here Comes the Sun, and it's not as if he knew their catalog or anything.
Yeah.
He knew a couple songs.
So the next record you've picked is Fleetwood Mac. Was that at the same time you were getting into them? Or were they forbidden, or was that at a later time?
No, this was a later time. So I got kicked out of conservatory around being 11 years old.
Why did they kick you out?
Arguments about the direction of the teaching in the school. And I said, while we're analyzing music, we really need to be analyzing, say, the Beatles songs. And they said, wait a minute, they're not going to be around in 30 years' time. And I said, you're wrong. They're going to be around in 30 years' time. Anyway, the latest dean of the Peabody called me up recently, and they've invited me back to the school.
There you go, you see.
To see what they're doing. And they're teaching music very differently now, in a much more open manner, but they weren't open-minded then.
What were they? What did you have to learn then? What did they think? Was it just classical music?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And I wanted to be a composer, and they said, look, female composers in our world don't do very well, Sunshine. And I thought,
that's not a very good sort of view to take, is it, if you're teaching composition?
Yeah, that's right. But the sad thing is that it's true. The women meaning they weren't given the commissions, they weren't given the opportunities. But in the pop world, with Joni Mitchell and Carole King and Aretha Franklin, it was opening up to women. Yes, the jazz world had opened a bit up with Billie Holiday, but it was really opening up for women.
Yeah.
But the reason I picked Fleetwood Mac was because to earn a living, my dad, after I got kicked out, he said, look, I don't want you smoking pot with all your friends and becoming, a waste. So he took me down when I was 13 to Georgetown, near the White House in Washington, and nobody would give us a shot. He had his dog collar on, so he was dressed like a preacher, and talked to the managers of all these little cafes, and they said, yeah, no. And then we went to a gay club, and they invited us in, and the gays said, play for tips, and that was the beginning.
That's fantastic. And so you heard this record in there?
I was hearing this record at the time, and I could do requests. And people would ask me for all kinds of things. One of the songs we're going to play later was a big, big request.
Well, let's play the Fleetwood Mac song, and then let's hear more about that request time. We were just discussing with Tori how her first experience was her father. So he managed to get you a gig playing in a gay club for tips. And what sort of songs would people come and ask you to do? How old were you? 13, right?
I was 13.
Yeah, it's very nice of your dad to get you a job in a club, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my dad has a dark side, which is good. He's sort of agent minister, And the thing is, he got a lot of flack for that at the church. I mean, a lot of flack. And he said, well, where is a 13-year-old girl the safest? With a bunch of gay guys. And he was absolutely right. I don't think he was very safe. I think, some of the men found him quite attractive.
And what sort of songs were you playing there? Describe the club. How was it? Was it like out of a Batman set? What was the thing?
Well, popcorn on the tables, a bar in the corner, an upright piano, a little microphone, and sort of like what you have here. So not a tall upright, but short top, flat top, so you could see people. Little tiny tip jar. And the gays were great. They got rid of my brandy snifter, and they said, you need a bigger tip jar, honey.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
that was great. I mean, I just played for tips, and I played anything from Hoagie Carmichael, Gershwin, Cole Porter.
But that's a great, must be an incredible learning experience. I mean, I think a lot of people who play, whether it's the Beatles playing in the club in Hamburg, the only way really to learn is you can't really do it in your bedroom. You can sort of learn, I suppose, about playing, what the chords are called and everything from a teacher, and learn your technique in the bedroom. But the only real way to learn is by having to learn lots of songs and play them all in a night to the people.
No, that's absolutely right. And not just your songs. What you're saying is playing other people's songs, because that's how you learn structure. And the funny thing about today is, when I hear about somebody who's on YouTube, was in their living room, and then all of a sudden they're playing, the Apollo or something, they've missed a stage because I don't really think you want to learn on the job at the Apollo or Radio City.
Yeah.
You want to learn it in the club. And and I'll tell you, when you can't get people's attention because they're spilling beer on you or, knocking it over and things like that, you think, no, I'm going to grab their attention.
Yeah.
How am I going to do this? And it trains you as live performers.
And also, I think the act of playing in a small place, it trains you to make people. So with your music, can you make them sort of cry or dance, get their attention,
That's
and
right.
start to move them? Because if you can't do that, then you've hold on a second.
That's right.
Are you doing the right thing? So will you play one of those? So let's recreate the atmosphere. Turn the lights down, put a bit of popcorn on the table, recreate that atmosphere. Would you play one of those songs with us now?
I would love to.
So what was the one that you would be asked to play frequently there?
Well, maybe it was because I was in the bar room, but I would get Tequila Sunrise asked a lot by people, and Last Round is being called. There's always that guy in the
frantic
corner.
Atmosphere in everywhere when the last orders are called, aren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. People are either sort of grabbing hold of one another or grabbing hold of much more than they can possibly manage to drink. Your new record, 20 years, Gold Dust, 20 years of conversations. Tell us about the conversations.
I guess I'm really fortunate in that people will come up to me in a coffee shop somewhere. I'll be, New York City. Somebody will just come up to you and say, the song that you did, I want you to know my story, if you have a minute. And then they'll tell me.
Because hearing your song, it was a part of their lives sort of thing.
Yes, and they have an experience and a story to tell. And women from all ages come up to me and tell me their story. And so the funny thing is, I don't know if they know this, but I'm not hearing the song they're talking about usually, but the seeds are being planted for a new song. So the muses are saying, listen, there's a new sound coming in. Maybe it's only 4 bars, a 4-bar phrase, but a new song is happening while they're talking about their story.
So that's the new story. It's a beautiful ongoing process.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, the record that you've just made is extraordinary. It's with the Dutch Symphony Orchestra, and we're going to play another track from it. What's the last track we're going to play from it?
We're going to play a song that was originally from Little Earthquakes, but it's one of my biggest requests. And it's about a girl and her father. And the funny thing is, when I wrote it thinking about myself as a little girl with her father and grandfather. But I was seeing pictures of my daughter when she fell on the ice in Vienna when she was 2, and her dad picked her up. And so the pictures are changing as the songs are evolving.
That's fantastic. Well, it's been wonderful having you as our guest here this evening. Thank you for joining us. Tori Amos.
Thanks, guys.
Here is Winter.